Everyone. It is such a pleasure to have every one of you here. I am Fehmida Kapadia. I am the founder of Amplify MedTech, through which we support the MedTech ecosystem in the region. Um, Let me share a little my screen so that I can share a little bit about Amplify MedTech and what we do. Launched Amplify MedTech a little over a year ago with the mission to support the medtech ecosystem in the DMV region. We have been working with founders, with ecosystem providers, with experts in the region for over a year now, providing a bunch of support, including education, networking, and workshops. We are also starting to offer consulting services through Amplify MedTech now for medtech startup companies that need additional support as they are building and moving forward. Um, we support every aspect of the medtech ecosystem, from startups up to ecosystem support organizations and experts, because we strongly believe that for a successful medtech ecosystem, it's important that all players work together and support each other as we are building and growing this ecosystem. Um, I Our goal for launching Amplify MedTech was because we really believe that medtech is growing not just in the DMV region, but I think overall there has been a significant growth in the medtech space, and we need more resources to support the medtech ecosystem as it's growing. And so our goal for launching Amplify MedTech was to really bring the ecosystem together so that we can have enhanced collaboration, facilitate access to resources, engage the community, and support economic growth of the region. At this point, um, uh, we have over 700 members in our ecosystem, and we are very happy to support everyone and on their journey in developing, supporting, and growing the medtech ecosystem in the region. I want you to know that our next event is on April 23rd. We're very excited about this event. It is a startup showcase and pitch event. We are going to be hosting this event in the newly renovated Key Tech spaces in Baltimore in the Federal Hill region. It will be an opportunity for us to showcase some of the fabulous startups in the region, and also an opportunity for everyone to network, meet these startups and other startups, and continue building, growing, and supporting the network. The QR code for the event is up on the screen. You're welcome to scan it, and we look forward to seeing many of you at that event on April 23rd. I also wanted to let you know that we actively post on LinkedIn. So if you're not following our LinkedIn, please do so that you can stay up to date with all the wonderful things that are happening at Amplify MedTech. So with that, I want to now welcome our wonderful panel for today. This has been such a pleasure putting this panel together, as well as being a part of this fabulous panel. So we have Saundra Pelletier, we have Summer Baburek, and Selena Shirkin. I'll turn it over to you. Saundra, why don't you kick us off and introduce yourself?
Okay, perfect. No pressure. So my name is Saundra Pelletier, and I am the CEO of Evofem Biosciences, EVFM. We have two FDA-approved revenue-generating assets on the market, and we really exist because of the lack of innovation in women's healthcare. And what I mean by that is the category of contraception has hundreds of Me Too products that are literally no differentiating characteristics whatsoever, except they're just delivered in a different way, but still synthetic hormones. So we brought to market the first and the only FDA approved birth control with no hormones, no systemic activity in the body. Women only use it when they have sex. And what will help you remember it is we say fex before sex. The product is PHEXX. It is a gel in a pre-filled applicator that helps a woman's body maintain her natural pH, making it inhospitable to becoming pregnant. And we also have a product called Solisec for trichomoniasis and bacterial vaginosis. Why we care about that is that it's one dose, one and done. Instead of taking metronidazole twice a day for 7 to 14 days, women use a sachet of granules that they put in pudding, applesauce, yogurt, silver bullet. So we're excited because why we want to matter is yes, with products, but we also want to matter with innovation. And you'll hear in my comments later, we launched something called Say Vagina because of the shadow banning and the lack of opportunity to educate women and girls about their bodies. When you can educate men and say men's body parts in every way you want to, even crudely, but if you say vagina, your post does not go up. So we believe that that is inequitable. So we're all about vaginas, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Saundra. Summer, would you like to tell us a little bit more about Hera Biotech?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Summer Baburek. I'm the CEO and founder of Hera Biotech. Hera Biotech is a precision medicine platform focused on indications that uniquely or specifically impact women. We are focused on tissue-based analysis, which we believe will drive and unlock actionable insights and efficiencies throughout the patient care paradigm. We start with diagnostics, which is where our tissue-based analysis comes in. And our first two products are in endometriosis and in cervical cancer. So our endometriosis product is a molecular diagnostic in-office test, very easy. Think pap smear. But then on the cervical cancer side, don't think pap smear because we'll replace that with the Evofem device, which is a point of care cervical cancer diagnostic, analyzing diseased tissue from healthy tissue on the cervix. No scrape, no muss, no fuss, and in about 90 seconds you'll have your answer. So happy to be here.
Thank you, Summer. And Selena, tell us a little bit more about fetal therapy technologies.
Yeah, definitely. Hi, everyone. I'm Selena. I'm very honored to be on this panel and see just the wonderful turnout that we have. So I'm a biomedical engineer. I got my master's and bachelor's from Johns Hopkins in biomedical engineering. And while I was in my undergrad, I actually started working on a project that I eventually spun out into what is now Fetal Therapy Technologies. We're a microsurgical device company developing purpose-built tools for fetal surgery and broader microsurgery. So our first product is a radially expanding port. It was originally designed with a use case in fetal surgery. For those of you that are unfamiliar, fetal surgery is this science fiction but real life surgery. It's surgery done on a pregnant mother to operate on a baby and fix a life-threatening or severe birth defect before birth. And so at the core of our technology, what we've developed is this radially expanding port that can go in at a small diameter, but still allows surgeons to use their full range of surgical instruments during the procedure. So smaller hole, less damage equals better patient outcomes. And what I will touch on, I'm sure, later in this panel is that fetal surgery is an incredibly specialized and niche field within women's health and just broader surgical disciplines. And so for our company to be financially sustainable, we've actually had to pivot our target market away from fetal surgery and into broader microsurgical disciplines like endovascular procedures. So again, very happy to touch on all of that, and it's an honor to be here today.
Welcome, Selena. It is so exciting to have you both on board, have you all on board, because all of you are working on some pretty important problems in FemTech. But we all agree that there is more that needs to be built in FemTech. If you had the power to change one thing tomorrow that would really unlock more therapies and treatments for women, what would that be? And feel free to jump in. Saundra, why don't you get us started?
Okay. So if I had the power to change one thing, one, I would immediately take over the FDA and I would run the FDA because that would be such a better choice. Yes. Okay. I would do that if I had the power, but let's be a little more practical just for the moment. So the one thing that I would change is approval is not access. Just because you can work your butt off and do phase one, phase two, phase three, you can invest all this time and money for this unmet need to get this drug approved, and then you get blocked by payers. There is a lack of synergistic relationship between approval and access. So I would change the way that managed care plans choose to mandate their approvals and what they allow women to get. And because right now the process is very unequal. And for example, there were plans that told us we had to give them a 60% discount before they would let a cancer patient get access to our product when which they cannot use any other synthetic hormone anyway. We're the only FDA approved non-hormonal birth control, but they were told by United you have to fail on 8 different products before we will cover this product for you. So I would change the payer landscape because they treat women's health as discretionary, not essential.
Very well said. Approval is not access, and there are so many other barriers to entry that we encounter. And Saundra, you had a very interesting journey, even going through approvals, right?
We did. We did. And I'll tell you my naive quick statement. I believed because we were the only non-hormonal vaginal pH modulator. So in the Office of Women's Health under ACA, there's 18 categories of contraception. Well, we believed, of course, we were going to get our own 19th category. We did the largest contraceptive study ever to be done in history with 112 sites across the United States. And once we got approval, they said, no, we're not going to give you your own category. So we had to do a really big political push where I had to go to DC and meet with both sides of the aisle. We tried a civilized way, which was ineffective. So then we had to try the shame game, which I don't feel bad about and I don't apologize for. The ends justifies the means. And we finally got our own category and we now have 93% payer coverage, but we've been on the market for 5 years. So it took 5 years to get 93% coverage. So yes, that it was a long journey.
Yeah, and kudos to you, Saundra, for, sticking with it and making it happen.
Thank you.
Summer, what is one thing that you would change?
All right. Well, I'll take over A16Z while Saundra takes over the FDA.
I love that.
So I come from the VC side, right? So I was in life science VC for 10 years prior to starting Hera. And I would love to see more non-women's health investors in the space. I think it's the only way that the space is going to advance at all. And I concern myself a lot with the answer to the good old boys club isn't the good old girls club. So we really just need a bigger table so that everyone can sit at it. So that's what I would do. And in kind of a tertiary thing there, I would maybe scrap most of the self-proclaimed women's health experts in the space, because I think if that's what we're going to find is when real investors come in, that's not going to be enough. So, I think we need more women speaking about the topic, and I think we need to make a bigger table where we can have a lot more traditional life science, diagnostics, and device funds participating.
Summer, what type of women's health experts would you like to bring to the table? You said that you want to, have more women's health experts on the table. You want to replace the existing ones. What is missing in the current conversation around women's health?
Yeah. So I'd love to see a practicing OB-GYN on a panel. Like, not an OB-GYN that's been in executive business leadership for the last 25 years and then pontificating down like what practicing OB-GYNs are experiencing. Like, no. Let's have some practicing OB-GYNs tell us like what's going on. It's to Saundra's point with the FDA, when we talked about having our product and we were evaluating a breakthrough designation with our product, they told us they talked to their OB-GYNs, all 2 of them, and they told them that endometriosis didn't qualify for breakthrough designation. And I said, please explain to me how it is not an irreversibly debilitating disease. And they said, oh, well, it goes away in menopause. And I said, and all two of your OB-GYNs told you that? How long has it been since both of hims practiced? I mean, that's just the most asinine position, right? So I think, I come at this from the people closest to the problems are usually the best suited to fix them. And so I think there's too much space in between who's talking on behalf of women's health and who's actually practicing, innovating, experiencing women's health. So I'd love to see more patients. I'd love to see more founders, and I'd love to see more practicing clinicians in the space. And it doesn't have to just be an OB-GYN, right? I love my gynocs. I love my nutritionists. I love my DOs. Like, let's get them all in here because women have a tendency to prefer to attack health problems holistically. We want to make lifestyle changes before we choose interventions from a therapeutic standpoint. We want to try physical therapy, whatever it is, right? And so I think it would be really beneficial to hear from all of those folks.
Yeah.
Sorry, can everyone please make sure that you're muted? Thank you, Summer. Selena, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think once we've got Saundra at the FDA and Summer at A16Z, what we really need as the third layer is more of technology designed for women by women. And, I've been doing a lot of pitching in the past 2 weeks, and I've had the amazing opportunity to interact with founders like Saundra and Summer and a lot of other women's health founders making therapeutics and new IUDs and new all sorts of devices that either they've had personal problems with or people in their life had problems with. But really, it's just incorporating more of that user-centered design and really making sure you're solving problems for the end user while keeping them in the loop. Because I feel like all of these innovations that I'm seeing that are wonderful now, we should have seen 20 years ago. And it's like, why have we not seen this? Why do we have to do so much education of everybody around us to show that half of the population has so many of these problems that still have to be addressed? And incorporating Saundra's point, not only is it enough to have technologies that solve real problems that you've done the customer discovery, but there also has to be that willingness to pay, and it has to fit into the reimbursement side of things. So not only do we need to educate everybody else around us, we have to educate our payers. And to Summer's point of endometriosis, people need to understand that these are debilitating, life-altering conditions that have to be covered. And so that's kind of my piece, is really making sure that we're solving problems, we're solving them well, and we're keeping all of these different stakeholders in the loop, users, investors, and payers, and we make solutions that work for everyone.
Right, wonderfully said, Serena. And you are developing a technology in a clinical area that has historically not been a focus, right? What do you have to spend your time educating people on that you feel like should already be understood?
Yeah, that's a great question, Fehmida. For me, like I mentioned, I work in fetal surgery, which is a super niche area of women's health. This field itself is very new. It's only been around for about 40 years. And again, I've mentioned it's kind of this like Grey's Anatomy, sci-fi, but real life surgery. And I remember when we were shadowing this procedure for the first time in the OR, we realized, the challenges with this field. Yes, it's very complex surgery, but it's made even more dangerous by the fact that all of these surgeons who are world renowned are using tools off label from different procedures. There are no purpose built tools that are designed to access the uterine environment with the pregnant uterine environment with minimal damage. And so what we spend a lot of our time doing, especially when we're talking to investors or other stakeholders who've never heard of fetal surgery, is first education. But then, my company, it's not your typical medtech company, and this is what's been very challenging the whole 3 years I've been working on this company, or first project and now company, is we're not your typical medtech startup. We have a huge unmet need in fetal surgery, but in order to solve that social mission, we need to be financially sustainable enough. And to do that, we've had to find parallel unmet needs within broader microsurgical disciplines. So making sure that the problem that I'm solving is translatable across, interventions in the veins and arteries, right? We had to go to those surgeons and ask, if you had this technology, would it solve a meaningful problem for you? And so that's what we've spent a lot of time and research doing, is evaluating those user needs from the completely different end of microsurgery and becoming a company that solves two problems at once.
Right, right. So yeah, like getting that traction and getting that buy-in has been challenging because there are a lot of women's health issues that are not fully understood and well understood. And Hera, Summer, you pointed this out, right? I got confused between your company name and
I will answer to Hera. I will be the goddess of family and fertility. Absolutely. I'm here for it.
So, like you're working on ovarian cancer and endometriosis, right? Like many women are fully aware that these are massive issues, right, for our health. But there seems to be a lot of education that you also have to do. Like where do you see the biggest gap where you have to teach people what endometriosis is or what ovarian cancer is?
Yeah. Yeah, I think what's really frustrating is just when you think you've done enough education in one vein of it, then you have this whole new vein of things that you need to educate people on. And so it gets really, really frustrating. So beyond just educating people about endometriosis, and to Selena's point, when we first started, it was almost like my mission not to talk about fertility because I wanted to be in women's health, not tied to fertility, because it should matter. Even if it's not about a baby, it should matter. But it wasn't until we started talking about endometriosis being the number one cause of female infertility that people went, oh, well, that's a problem. And I'm like, well, yeah, sure. Never mind the women that are passing out in bathtubs from the pain or, having to have iron infusions every month from blood loss. Sure. But I think the other side of it is it's not even just investors. It's not even just, it's also on the clinician side. Like Selena doesn't ever have to talk to someone that does fetal surgery to understand that that's a problem. But we've had to talk to plenty of care providers who don't think it's uncomfortable to have your cervix scraped during a pap smear. Oh, no, there's no nerve endings in the cervix. You can't even feel it. I'm like, I'm sorry, did you just tell me I can't feel it when you scrape on my organ? I'm pretty sure I know that I felt it. Like it's a massive frustration and undertaking to feel like, okay, not only am I having to justify what I personally experience in an exam, but also what a lot of women complain about in these exams to tell you that this is a problem and that people care about that aspect of it. And then I have to educate investors as to what the problem is, right? Because I think one of the key pieces in that, and specific to cervical cancer and not endometriosis, is, like, oh, we've got it solved. Gardasil, HPV, we're done. And I'm like, well, aren't you adorable? Not solved. So it's just, I think that's what really can be overwhelming is it's not just one thing that you have to educate people on. It's like every aspect of what you're building, why you're building it, and what problems it's solving, and why it should be paid for, and why it's of value. It gets really, really, it gets overwhelming.
Yeah, no, fully understood. Saundra, you have brought a couple of products to market, and I know you've, discussed some of the challenges that you've run into with the FDA as well as getting market access. But when you were starting to build this company and trying to raise money, what what were like as you were building this company, what were some of the challenges that you encountered that were that were unexpected or unanticipated?
Well, one of the things was that I was operating under the belief that because we were truly innovating, because 1960 is when first birth control pills came to market, and there's factual evidence that says there's 23 million women that will not use hormones. They've tried pills, patches, IUDs, and the side effects have been pervasive. I believe in choice. Women should have a variety of choices, but if you're one of 23 million that will not use a hormone, to have a product that's available for you to use on demand, I also had this mindset that, of course, male investors know women don't have sex every day. Why do they need to over medicate themselves every single day if they're having side effects? So, one of the biggest challenges at first is I had delusions. I had delusions that obviously these men were going to understand. And I got, when I say no's, if I honestly, I would be 400 feet tall if I had an inch for every no that I got. And then finally, I had this aha moment where, and all of my investors are men. And I wish we had more female investors, but I didn't go to any rooms where women were in the room as an investor. Long story short, I learned the hard way that why talk if no one's going to listen? And that being a chameleon is not disingenuous, it's not unauthentic, it's the ends justifies the means. And so I would sit down and say, "Do you have a son? Or do you remember when you were a young man?" Most of them had sons, but if they didn't, I'd say, "Do you remember? Can you imagine if your parents would have asked you to take a medication every single day of every week for 5 or 10 or 15 years? You were going to have side effects every single day. You were probably not going to feel like yourself again until you were done that medication, which you didn't need to save your life. And there could be unintended consequences that you don't even know because it's never been studied." And they would say, "Stop, stop, stop, stop." They're like, "What are you talking about? That's crazy." And I'd say, "Well, why is it okay for our daughters?" And you could tell that they were like, "Oh," right? Like, "Oh." And it was just a way to make them be present because most of the time they would be like, "We're going to talk about vaginas," like la 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 la, and wait till I got to the money slide, right? How much does it cost? How much are you going to make? When are you going to be profitable? Okay, and who's going to be your celebrity endorser, right? And do you have Kim Kardashian? And so at the end of the day, it was really about figuring out how to speak to investors in a way that they would hear the story, that it actually pulled on their heartstrings and their wallet strings and their head. But it was also really about saying, don't just fund clinical development. You should also fund execution. We've done the work to identify the unmet need, but we also understand how to commercialize this. That's how you're going to get your money back. I understand, right, that there's a lot of other products on the market, but here's how you're going to get your money back based on the patient size that exists, based on what our margin is going to be, and here's the realistic time that I'm going to be giving you your money back. And it was a little bit of a more precise, colder pitch. My pitch has evolved from being, I think, very passionate to very, "Here's the facts, Jack. Sit down. Let me tell you what's happening." And then I would say, "Oh, and by the way, we have a study in the Journal of Sexual Medicine that shows that when women use our product, they have 2.5 times more sexual pleasure. And all contraceptive marketing has been fear-based. You don't want to get pregnant. You don't want to get pregnant. We're going to suggest that women should have pleasurable sex." Can you imagine that? What a concept. So anyway, I have to tell you, it was a long journey, mostly for me, because most of these investors, they want to know that the CEO, you can have by the way, we all have a lot of smart people that we need, right? It takes a village, but at the end of the day, you've got to have it together in a way that you can handle the majority of questions all by yourself, because I think that the stress of investing in women for the men that I dealt with was higher than if I were a man. No question. So I had to be a little better. That was a long
Right.
answer. I'm sorry.
And you bring up a very important point, right? It's not, I think that we need to let education is important in bringing everyone to the table. As you've talked about, Summer, and you, Sandra, we need everyone involved in this conversation, but I think that there is the gap that exists is people don't really recognize that there is a gap here. And so we need to educate them that there is a gap here. Saundra, you gave a very interesting anecdote when we were talking last, where you told us that female birth control was tested on men. Was right?
Yes, I have to tell you this, that when, and people find this gobsmacking, but this is absolutely true. All early studies on birth control were done in men because they believed that female patients, particularly female patients of reproductive age, that the hormonal changes were so inconsistent that it was too difficult to study them. And so the assumption was that women were just smaller versions of men, and all the birth control studies were done on men. And when you think about that, so the other thing I would say, back to the very first question you asked us, what we would change, is that there's a lot more inclusive involvement of women in a variety of different studies, not just studies that are for products just about women. I mean, studies that are for both sexes. But yes, you would be shocked to know that, yes, that women weren't even studied.
Yeah.
So it's been a
Yeah,
fascinating journey.
absolutely. And this has been an ongoing conversation in the last decade about being inclusive with our clinical trial designs, right? And making sure that everyone is represented so that the data is representative of the population.
Right.
Selena, as you are going down your pathway of starting to fundraise, what are some of the challenges that you are encountering, and what are some of the questions that you are getting that you have had to address?
So actually, the biggest question I always get from investors, and it's is why haven't you changed your company name? And so I will be, we'll be fundraising soon. We'll be fundraising officially in the fall. And to do that, I do need to change my company name. I need to rebrand. I need to take the fetal piece, unfortunately, at least front facing out of the equation, such that when I go talk to investors, I have to lead with the market that's going to make them money. Kind of to Summer and Saundra's points earlier, right? Because if I'm being so honest, the fetal side right now, fetal surgery is, it's very rare. It's rare because it's unsafe, and it's unsafe because we have this lack of innovation. So it's kind of just stuck in this endless cycle where nothing is being done here. No large medtech strategic wants to touch the space. It's not yet really that profitable yet. There's not a big market for it yet. But if it were made safer, with something like our device, we can open the door to performing so many other types of fetal surgery. We can make fetal surgery for those that need it, when it's life-changing and life-saving, accessible and safe. And so that's, our mission and our vision 5 to 10 years in the future. But in the 2 to 3 years of when investors want to invest and see a company reach market and commercialize and get FDA approval, they're really looking for those high volume, broad markets where there is a willingness to pay, where strategics are often involved, where there's a high possibility for an exit or an acquisition so that they can get their money back. And so, yeah, I would say my biggest challenge right now, and if anyone in the audience has names or suggestions or ideas or good marketing people, we need to rebrand, and we need to rebrand to something a bit broader that represents general safer microsurgery. So yeah, I would say like the biggest challenge across this whole journey has always been what is going to be our market access strategy, what is going to be our go-to-market strategy to ensure that we are financially sustainable, that we have willingness to pay, that we have customers, both on the clinical champion side and are aligned on the value analysis committee side, because when you're selling to a hospital, you can't just rely on the clinician. You need a clinical champion to get in the door, but the end buyer and the purchaser of your products is the hospital value analysis committee. And for them, you need to show measurable ROI, return on investment, whether that's cost savings or time savings in an actual meaningful way, or you make that hospital money. And so, it's kind of this two-sided coin that we're always selling to both the clinical champion and the value analysis committee, and making sure that our go-to-market strategy makes sense and it's viable, such that we can eventually reach that social mission in fetal surgery, which again, that's a more 5 to 10 years down the road thing that we can solve, and we could really expand the field if we make it safer. But unfortunately, we need to solve two problems at once and start in a broader microsurgical market.
And Selena, you're doing, like, it's so important that you say that you have to think about your market access early on, right? And make sure that you know how you're getting to market. But you'd also mentioned an important point, that only 1% of patients that need fetal surgery are getting it right now, right? And if your device could make it safer, it would automatically open up the market for you.
Yeah, definitely. Again, it's going to take time, but a lot of patients right now are either opting out of fetal surgery just because it's too risky. It's kind of like a gamble. It's a 60-40 toss-up of if you'll have complications or not, with 40% being the current complication rate in fetal surgery, which is preterm birth. So yeah, if we can reduce preterm birth instances meaningfully in fetal surgery, that would be game-changing for the field, and that's what everyone needs right now. That's what all these fetal surgeons want. They just want safer outcomes for their patients.
Selena,
Right.
a good proxy for that is amniocentesis versus NIPT testing.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Summer.
Because I was a geriatric pregnancy on my last one, which is a fun title. So I got the NIPT testing. But if someone said they were going to stick a needle in my belly button, I would have opted out.
So this is not your first rodeo, right? You've done this figuratively and literally more than once. How are you seeing the investment landscape evolve?
Oh, well, what I think is interesting is when I've been in VC for a long time, but then moving into this women's health space, and we've been here 6 years now, 7 years, 6 years. Um, I think one of the things that is exciting about the space is I do see the tide turning. I see more papers getting published on real scientific basic research that we need in order to fundamentally understand a disease. Um, and that's what motivates investors, right? Like we can all talk about how endometriosis is a big problem. It's a big problem. It's a big problem. Oh, ACOG just recently issued guidances on it. Oh, yeah, because they had to, because it's a big problem and everybody was telling them it was a big problem, you know? I mean, so, I am excited by the fact that I think one of the things that I hot topic, not popular opinion, I don't know what the going term is for this, but I hate the word femtech. I think it was great that she came up with it and we all coalesced around it and burned our bras and told men they were awful. And now what are we doing, right? So it gave us like something to coalesce behind, but then at the same time it became an exclusionary term. Like, yeah, we don't do femtech. We don't do femtech. And the first wave of that, if you will, really came up during COVID. And so we just shoved everything down on the patient. We went, oh, forget about it. If you're not going to listen to us in the doctor's office or in the hospital, then F you, we'll download an app and tell you what's wrong with us. Well, maybe you will. But at the end of the day, you're still going to end up at a doctor's office, right? So I think we did a really, really great job of informing the patients, of empowering them with tools to collect information, to give them data to share. But we've not built the clinical infrastructure to handle all of that new demand and all of that really new, fun, educated patient. And I mean that seriously, because I've not met an OB-GYN that doesn't want to engage with a patient, right? And so mostly because I avoid the bad ones. But anyways, so I think that what I'm excited about is all of a sudden, I think the investor community is starting to wake up to the fact that we are not going to find all the answers in the App Store. We are going to have to fund real scientific innovation in this space, people working on therapeutics, people working to unlock tissue-based insights and disease progression insights and things like that, so that we can have drugs that actually treat the diseases and not just silence the symptoms. So I find that really exciting. And what I'm hoping follows that is the investment into the clinical infrastructure that can support all of the patients that we have now armed with fantastic tools to collect data about their bodies.
That is such an important point, Summer. I completely agree with you, right? We've had a lot of apps come about and they have been valuable. But I work in the medtech space, and when I say medtech, I include medical devices, diagnostics, and digital health. A lot of femtech has been in the digital health space, but by my definition, they would actually not fit in the digital health space, because when I say digital health, I mean a technology solution that connects the patient with the provider. And a lot of apps leave out that important piece of connecting the patient with the provider. The patient gets the information, but unless and until you can do something with that information doesn't take you very far. And so, yes, you're very right. That's a very important point. And I'm so glad to hear that, things are changing in that space. And Saundra, if since you have been there, done this, what advice do you have for investors who are investing in this space? What do you think they should be thinking about and looking forward to?
I think that my advice for investors is that to mitigate risk, they should ensure that if they're investing in a clinical stage company, that they know what the plan for commercialization is, that you should invest in the full piece, unless you're just working with a university or a scientific institution that's working on something in a vacuum. But if you're really investing in a company, to really make sure that even if they might not have the infrastructure at the moment, but that their commercial scale is already in their mindset. That this isn't just about, I'm going to deliver one leg of the stool, right? You've identified the unmet need. You now know the clinical studies that are required to get this drug or device to market. But what really is the best platform to make this available to patients, to educate the providers, to commercialize it? I find that a lot of investors express a lot of frustration because they're worried about clinical risk, right? They want to de-risk it. Then they also said to me, we had one product already approved by the FDA. And they would say, well, there's too much risk. You're a one product company. If something goes wrong with manufacturing, what are you going to do? So there's always an excuse, of course, right? But my advice to investors would be really make sure that you are looking at the whole strategy from bench all the way into the consumer and the physician's hand, number one, which I think is very important. But the other thing too is that prioritizing access and affordability, one of the things that we've seen happen is that early patient pull through, whether it's through telemedicine or through their healthcare plans, that you have to also be mindful of the pricing strategies. So, for example, investors would say, didn't ask me, well, how are you pricing this product when there's nothing like it if it's a real innovation? Well, we did lots of diligence with payers and with pharmacy chains and said, what would our price point have to be so we don't get blocks and step edits? And they said, as long as you charge us what we are paying for a branded pack of birth control pills, you won't get blocked. But having the evidence and the data to share with investors that these decisions, yes, they're made on our historical expertise in these fields, but it's also based on diligence with a variety of different constituents that are working in the market now, right? To Summer's point, OBGYNs that are actually practicing, right? We got a lot of information from practicing OBGYNs, so we knew what were going to be the stigmas, the misconceptions. And so, and I would say to investors, I literally said, you shouldn't just talk to the founder. You should talk to who's ever going to be prescribing it, get feedback from them, get feedback from a payer. If you really want to do your diligence, right? Get a little bit of feedback from each of these connected groups that are going to make this investment successful instead of just looking down a narrow hallway to say, okay, here's your pitch deck, got it. So that's one of the biggest things. And the other thing too is that we asked a woman to be on our board who used to work in the FDA division of the FDA that approved women's healthcare products. She's still a practicing OBGYN, and her involvement has been the most invaluable. It's been extraordinary because sometimes she'll say to me, like, hey, hello, what color is the sky in your world? What are you even talking about right now? But meaning, like, we'll say, this is how we want to position this to a provider. And she's like, what are you talking about? Providers don't care about that. Anyway, it's been important to your board composition. I say to investors, you should talk to a board member as well. Look at the backgrounds of the board members. So that's what I say to investors is you don't have to be exhaustive, but do your homework with a little bit of information of each of these constituents. And then at the end of the day, right, then you make the decision.
Right. Yeah, very well said. Making sure that, all stakeholders in that ecosystem are involved,
Yeah.
because it's not a one-person show getting a product to market, and making sure that you understand the entire space instead of just one aspect of it.
Yes.
So, as we're coming close to the panel, I would like to turn it back to Selena. Selena, what are some final thoughts that you have for us that would make women's health an emerging category to standard healthcare?
I think my closing thoughts are just I'm leaving very inspired hearing about the work that Saundra and Summer are doing. Again, these are products that should have existed long ago. And, we've had to do all this legwork to bring awareness to this field and really solve problems that each of us experience. And so it just makes me really happy to see people passionate about this space that are willing to put in the grit and the hard work and the determination to make products for all of us that are going to improve all of our lives and touch all of our lives in some way or another. So that's been really inspiring to me. And, again, I am a very early stage founder, but I can see the journey that's ahead of me based on what Saundra and Summer have said. So I'm just excited to keep going and to continue trying to make women's health better and develop products for populations that really need them.
Wonderful. Summer, any final closing thoughts?
I think for me, to piggyback off of what Saundra said a little bit, I mean, I'm a distracted founder because I have two products. So pick your poison. You can be a one-trick pony or you can be distracted. It's your choice. Which is funny because my answer to that is always, I have 3 kids and 4 dogs. I'm not distracted by this second product. Get over it. But, I think there is what I would end with is there is so much to be excited about in the space. There is so many positive things happening. It is much easier to find the negative. So choose to find the areas where progress is being made and draw your inspiration and your motivation from those places and know that things are happening and they're going in the right direction. And if there's investors in the room, I would say your worst enemy is FOMO.
Mhm.
Women's health, unfortunately, in a lot of different areas starts to get attention, and all of the markets in women's health are virtually untapped markets, right? There's a lot of white space or blue ocean or whatever metaphor you want to use. But as soon as somebody starts to make headway in that space, you get a lot of noise in, and it's usually superficial, and it's a bunch of this with not a lot of this, and it sucks funding resources from actual innovation in the space, and that's a problem. So I would encourage you to take a step back and think through what someone's actually telling you. We've done this a lot with places in the endometriosis space. Everybody was keen on liquid biopsy, and I'm like, help me help you. Help me understand how you're going to just take a sample of blood at some point, anytime down there, and that means endometriosis because you don't know anything about the disease or how it progresses or how it starts, and we don't even agree on where it comes from. Like, just take a beat and just think through things logically before you get all hyped up about what other people are saying. Oh, wouldn't this be so easy? Kind of a thing.
Right. Absolutely. And Saundra.
I guess I would end with I always say this statement, so I have to say it again, that a candle loses nothing by lighting another candle. And that coming to this panel today, and what I mean by that is that when women support each other, and Selena, when you ask for marketing help, you've got to look down in the chat. Lots of people offered to help you, which is amazing. But at the end of the day, I really think that these kinds of venues matter, right? Because you want to make sure you're inspecting what you expect. But the one thing Summer said earlier, I don't even know if we were on this panel. I think she might have, I don't know if she said it on the panel or not, is that if you're in a certain place in your trajectory, say you're in clinical trials or say you're wherever you are, the most useful advocates, the most useful cavalry to help you are people doing your same experience versus somebody who, and by the way, I will help any woman any time of the day or night, but I'm 250 years old on the inside, right? Or I feel that way. I'm saying people who are in your own space can make such a difference because you're real world experiencing it. I thought that was so well said, Summer. And it makes a difference. And if you think you don't have time, you do. You have to make time for it. I say you have to have a cavalry. Sometimes they'll just be emotional supporters, but sometimes they'll give you ideas and they've had failures. And maybe you don't have to have the same one because they'll help you out. But in the end, that's why I think it was an interesting group you picked, Fehmida, to come together in this panel. I think we're all like love each other, but I think we all love each other because we want to really be candid and transparent and help other women hopefully skip some of the gaslighting we went through. But my final comment is I do agree it's hopeful. I think things are getting much better. I really believe it. I think the blinds are being lifted. And I no longer say women's healthcare. I say I work in core healthcare, half the population. I don't work in women's
Right.
healthcare. It's core health.
Absolutely. 50% of the population. And on that remark, I am so happy to have you all on this panel. Your passion and your drive for what you're building is just so absolutely amazing. We have a couple minutes. If somebody has any questions, you can either unmute yourself or drop the question in the chat and we will take it.
Yeah, so I have a question. First off, thank you so much to all the speakers. It was fantastic. I was writing notes the whole time. I was like, this is great. So, I heard Summer when you mentioned that, how do we design something if the clinical research isn't there? Women's health research and research papers, there's not as much evidence as compared to, let's say, a cardiovascular product. So when innovators are at the beginning stage of the development process, do you have any thoughts or recommendations on, how do we design based on fact and research, especially when that is scarce right now?
Yeah. So I will answer this with a story, but I think it's how you have to do it. Sometimes you have to build the asset you don't have, right? So I come from the drug development space. That was the last company that I worked in that was exited. And it would have been really nice to have a diagnostics company putting together tissue-based assets and building databases and biobanks and things. Well, that doesn't exist in endometriosis. So we started there, and we started with single cell analysis of endometrial tissue, right? It's endometriosis. Let's start there. And what then I found was there was one other company in the world working on tissue-based endometriosis. They were doing single cell in uterine tissue. I met the would-be CEO of that company, and that's Dr. Cinzia Donato, who is our chief operating officer now. So women are more likely to do it than other people, but we decided that the Venn diagram of people who were going to appreciate why we were building what we were building the way we were building it was probably pretty small. So instead of pissing each other's sandboxes, let's put these assets together. And what that did is create the largest proprietary database in the space, made up of multiple data sets from single cell all the way down into qPCR. And now we have the largest proprietary biobank in the space. So we built the asset that we needed to really be able to clinically de-risk and do all of the things. So unfortunately, I think sometimes instead of finding it, what you need to find is a proxy, some proof of concept on your hypothesis, and then build the asset that you need to continue the development.
Awesome. Yeah, no, thank you so much. I love the example too. That's super helpful. So appreciate that insight.
Yeah.
And congrats on those proprietary banks. That sounds amazing.
Thank you. As a data scientist, it's my favorite.
Thank you.
All right. We are exactly at 1 o'clock. I want to be mindful of everyone's time. I know everyone dropped their LinkedIn information in chat, so feel free to reach out if you would like to chat further. But thank you all for joining us today. It was a real pleasure, and we'll see you on April 23rd.